Good evening, everybody. Tokyo Drew here, and I decided to do a video about the hardest Castlevania bosses. Obviously, there's not going to be the hardest Castlevania bosses for like pros, but I feel like these bosses will give you a run for your money the first time you're fighting them, and also too the first time I fought them. I remember having a tough time with them too. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. In the number 10 spot, we got the Necromancer from Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Now, what makes this boss so hard, especially in the beginning of the game, is that he's the second boss you fight in the game. A big issue with him is that he has two forms. The first form isn't too bad. He has some light projectiles, but then he has a second form that's like a winged demon form. He has this one energy ball attack where he kind of just goes into a ball and flies around the screen at a pretty quick speed. And if you get hit by it, it does a good amount of damage. And I feel like as a second boss, it's a pretty big difficulty spike for such a early boss in the game. In the number 9 spot, we have Death from the first Castlevania. Now again, a lot of people now will just cheese him with the holy water or the cross, but if you don't know to do that, he can be a very difficult boss. He starts on the right side of the screen and he'll kind of bounce around the screen, but the biggest thing that makes this boss fight difficult is the sickles. The sickles spawn all over the place, and sometimes they're in spots where you can't always hit them, so a lot of times you're going to get cornered and just get pegged by the sickles to death. So again, that's another boss that could be very tricky. In number 8 spot, we got the Doppelganger in Castlevania 3. Now the Doppelganger, obviously for the pros who usually use Sypha in her ball spell or just spam him with axes, if you don't know what to do that, he's a very hard boss. A lot of times when you're first fighting him, you're going to try and go hit for hit. You're going to go at him with whatever character you have. And also, too, he'll become whatever character you are. So if you're Trevor, he's Trevor. If you turn into Alucard, it'll be Alucard. If you turn to Sypha, it'll be Sypha. And have the same attacks, although he may have different sub-weapon attacks. So if you try and go hit for hit with him or try to do like a War of Attrition thing, you will lose the fight. So again, he is a very hard boss, especially the first time you fight him. In another 7th spot, we have Beelzebub from Symphony of the Night. Now, Beelzebub, what makes him very tricky is that he's pretty much a large hanging corpse. Pretty much have to take out his body in segments. And the tricky thing about the fight is that he doesn't directly attack you, but he has these bugs, these large flies that constantly fly around him. And the more you damage him, the more flies fly around him. They kind of protect him and also deal heavy damage to you. But anytime you get hit by one of these flies, it's going to do a great deal of damage. And on top of that, off of his feet, he'll drip these larvae, and if you get hit by the larva, you'll get poisoned. So you have these status effects on top of these heavy hitting bugs that keep flying around the screen. And again, for a first timer, that's going to be a very tricky boss fight. Number 6 is Blackmore from Castlevania Order of Ecclesia. Now I remember struggling a lot with this boss playing through the game. And the biggest issue with him is he's strong against a lot of physical attacks. You have to come with magical attacks. But a lot of issues with the boss fight is just he casts a shadow on the wall, and a lot of his attacks from his shadow just have a really wide range of attack. You don't have a lot of places to go when he attacks, and a lot of the strategy is just going to be knowing where to go when he attacks. And again, I feel like that's another boss fight that has a high difficulty curve on him. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to try and beat him before he beats you, but it's never going to work. So again, he is also a very hard boss to beat. In the number 5 spot is the White Dragon from Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge. Now, what makes this fight very tricky is that when you're fighting him, when the boss fight starts, he's pretty much a dragon snake that goes through these tunnels. But the screen constantly scrolls right. And the issue you're going to have is you need to stay ahead of that screen at all costs. You always have to stay at the edge of the screen, because if he corners you in any area and knocks you back, he's just going to keep knocking you back over and over again, and you're not going to have a lot of opportunities to attack him. Pretty much have to stay ahead and hit him, and it could take you some time to kind of figure that out. It took me a while to figure out that you have to just stay really far ahead of him and deal damage from a safe distance. In the number 4 spot, we got Richter's Memory from Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, which is also a cool boss too, because for Jonathan Morris to use the vampire killer at his full power, he has to fight the last wielder of the whip. And in this game, it was Richter Belmont. And again, when you fight him, first of all, he has a ton of HP. He has all of his whip and item attacks, and his whip attacks are devastating. They do a ton of damage, as well as also his sub-weapons. And he also does item crashes, like he would do in Rondo of Blood. There's no real weapon that'll work on him really well, so you just gotta hang tight with him and just keep doing it till you do it. There's no secret to beat him. And the number 3 spot is Dracula from Castlevania Adventure. Now the biggest thing about this fight is not so much the fight itself. So the biggest issue is Dracula shoots a lot of projectiles, but the problem is you move very slow in the game. So dodging things in that game is very, very difficult, especially all of his projectiles in his force form. And he has a second form where he turns into a bat and flies from left to right. Again, in other games it wouldn't be that much of an issue to beat him, but because it's Castlevania Adventure and the character moves so slow, you have to really know when these attacks are coming and put yourself in a safe place. But as somebody who's fighting him for the first time, it's definitely an uphill battle of memorization. So number 2, the Dragon Zombies. I almost broke a Game Boy Advance, I should say, fighting the Dragon Zombies. It's a Circle of the Moon boss. There's 2 of them. They're pretty much side by side. They have long necks and they constantly rotate around each other, and they'll spam you with fire attacks. And the thing with them is there's 2 of them and you have to keep moving between them, and it's just really tough getting strategy for them. Because also you're fighting pretty much 2 bosses at the same time. A lot of times I just hide in the corner and just try and throw axes at them, but you eventually run out of hearts. And again, extremely tough boss. You have to really take one out first, but then when you do take one out, the other one will eat the first one and regain some health from it. So again, it's just all around a huge difficulty spike in the game. It's a very difficult boss to fight. The number 1 spot, I hate this boss so much, and I always hated this boss. Even when I fight this boss now, it gives me nothing but trouble. The Dracula and Dracula X for Super Nintendo. Now this fight is hard, but just for all the wrong reasons. You pretty much fight Dracula over a pit on top of these narrow-ass pillars. And the biggest issue is not so much his first form, you could safely take him out with axes, but his second form. I call it his, demon spandex form, because, he has this demon form with wings that looks like he's wearing a little Speedo. But the issue with him is that he'll fly in one direction depending on which direction you're facing when you beat Dracula. The issue with him is that he has these fireballs that are very hard to predict, and also this very quick laser attack. But again, the problem with the fight is you get hit once, you're going into the cliff. And that's the problem with the fight. You're never going to lose from losing health. You're going to lose by some bullshit attack knocking you in the pit. So the best thing you can do is hide on the edge of the screen and try and take him out. But again, he's going to work his way to the edge of the screen, and when he gets there, you're dead anyway. So again, extremely hard boss fight, but just because the layout of that final area, it was pretty much engineered to kill you over and over again. So anyway, guys, that's my top 10 hardest Castlevania bosses. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and have a good night. Thank you.